Hello, bold becomer, and thank you so much for joining us for another episode of the Bold Becomers podcast. I'm your host, Cara Janae, and I am so thrilled that you are back for another episode where we explore what it means to become as we embrace godly authenticity and live with shine. Let's get into today's episode. So we're here today to actually do the start of our very first podcast series where we're going to be talking about choosing your yes. And this entire series sparked from what I initially thought was a bad day. Let me just set the scene. So one thing you may not know about me is that I'm a mom of 5, including a 13-month-old baby girl. Her name is Cece, y'all. If you've ever had a little one, then you already know how they are about having their own schedules. And this particular night, Cece's schedule did not include much sleep for me. By the morning, I was already moving at a deficit. So I decided I'm going to try to shake off this grogginess by taking Cece for a walk. Knowing that, if I get out in the sun, more likely than not, it's going to help lift my mood. But even as I walked, the lack of sleep was just lingering, and my thoughts felt really cloudy, y'all. That's when I heard the Spirit simply say to me in a quiet but unmistakable voice, "You get to choose your yes." And at first I thought, okay, God, what do you mean by this? As I reached the corner of the street, I felt a nudge from God again that just said, you get to choose your yes. So what will you say yes to today? And so I paused for a moment. I was holding Cece's stroller and just letting the weight of those words really sink in. It wasn't just about my to-do list or the commitments that I had already made. It was about something much deeper. That question wasn't just asking me what I would do, but how I would be. In that moment, I realized how often my yes had been on autopilot, saying yes out of obligation, people-pleasing, or even habit, without ever stopping to consider if it was aligned with who I wanted to be or how God was calling me to live. That walk wasn't just about getting some fresh air. It became a wake-up call. God was inviting me to move from autopilot to intentional living and to stop blindly saying yes to everything and start seeking the truth about what I was truly called to say yes to. And so I have to ask you, fellow bold becomer, how many of your yeses are intentional versus automatic? I just want you to sit with that for a second. This first episode of the series, Choosing Your Yes, is going to explore why we live on autopilot. It's also going to explore the importance of evaluating your yes. And then finally, we're going to talk about how we can move from awareness to awakening and acknowledgement. Listen, you get to choose your yes. So what do you say yes to today? I am so excited to dive more into this topic with you. But first, let's get into our bold declaration for this week. For me, that moment on the walk wasn't just a wake-up call. It was an invitation to live differently. And that's what I want to declare for myself and for you today. Today's bold declaration. I get to choose my yes. With this truth, I am now aware that I must move from the autopiloted version of my yes to one that is informed and intentional. I see each day as a gift and an opportunity to co create with the Holy Spirit the life that God has designed for me. I make time to evaluate what I will say yes to and how it will align with how God is leading me. Today, I boldly declare, I choose my yes. Share this declaration on social media with a friend this week and tag me so I can celebrate your bold decision to choose your yes. You can tag me at Cara Janae Shine on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. I would love to hear from you and celebrate with you as you move boldly into choosing your yes. I don't think this is the first time, and I'm pretty sure this won't be the last time that you take notice of being on autopilot. But I just want to highlight that autopilot living is probably not the best way to be a bold becomer. In fact, a lot of times autopilot living shows up in subtle but powerful ways. It can look like people pleasing, fear of saying no, staying in relationships or commitments that no longer align, and making habitual decisions based on old versions of ourselves. Here's the thing: habitual decisions often come from who we were and not who we're becoming. And if we don't pause to evaluate, we'll keep getting the same results that leave us feeling stuck and unfulfilled. I'm thinking of a client that I had, T. Hey T, how are you? Who was struggling to understand why she never seemed to meet the goals that she had for her business. For the first few sessions, we'd check in and she'd say, "It's going okay. But every time I try to work on my business, my kids interrupt me with something they need." After a few weeks, I pointed something out. I said to her, "You're saying yes to your kids' priorities and no to your own." And that realization became an invitation for T. She began to seek the truth about her current yes. And that's what I want to do for you today. So here are some signs that you might be on autopilot. Feeling overwhelmed or stretched thin. It's what I like to call feeling stressed out and stretched thin. Listen, I know this feeling all too well. Another way this shows up is saying yes out of obligation rather than alignment. Are your yeses dressed as shoulds? And what I mean by that is not that you're verbally saying should, but internally, the message that you have sent to yourself or the message that is coming up for you is, I should be doing this. I should say yes to this. I should show up for that. Oftentimes, what you find is you may be verbally saying yes to the request, the person, etc., but internally, you feel the weight of the should because it's an obligation and not something that is in alignment. The third way that you can tell that you might be on autopilot is a lack of clarity about what truly matters to you. You find yourself busy and drained, but none of what you're doing really lights you up. And that's probably because you're saying yes to things that other people want for you or want you to do, but they're not really aligned with what God has called you to do or what you truly desire. And so, what we have to take note of is that there are consequences, there are costs that come with living on autopilot. So, one of the consequences or costs is that you actually miss opportunities to align with your purpose. Every yes that is out of alignment costs time and energy and emotional and mental space. So you have to learn to choose carefully. Another byproduct and consequence of autopilot living is emotional burnout or even resentment. Autopilot living feels like you're running on a treadmill that you didn't sign up for. And so, as you think about this a little bit more, I want you to really start taking assessment and notice of the ways that you're saying yes on autopilot. And hey, if this resonates with you, I want to invite you to stick around. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode, and share this podcast with another woman of faith who might need encouragement. We're building a community of bold becomers here, and I'd love for you to be a part of it. So this week, we're going to be exploring the principles of seek the truth and honor your story. So how do we seek the truth when choosing our yes? And more importantly, how do we seek the truth when we are evaluating our yes? It's important for you to pause and ask, why did I say yes? And many times, the answer that comes from it, if the reasoning for your yes is outside of you, more likely than not, it is not a yes that is coming from an authentic place. The second thing I want you to consider is this aligned with my values and my purpose? Most of the time, you get a autopiloted yes when you're not clear about how your yeses align with your values and your purpose. If you are pursuing purpose and aligning with your values, if those are the things that you're focusing on, it gets very challenging to get stuck in a habit of autopilot because you're constantly pursuing and keeping in focus what it is that you have before you, which is, this is what's important to me in values, right? And this is what I'm assigned to in this season in purpose. The last thing that I would like for you to consider when it comes to implementing how to seek the truth when you're evaluating your yes is, what would happen if I said no? And oftentimes, if we just take a moment to think through what the next thing would be after no, I think sometimes we can give ourselves the permission that we need to actually use no. The second principle that we're applying to this episode is honor your story. And so here are some things that I would like you to consider when it comes to evaluating your yes and honoring your story. You want to reflect on past decisions so that you can identify patterns. Honoring your story is really about coming to a place of acknowledgement about why you are where you are, what got you here, and are the results you are getting the ones that you want to continue to get. You also want to consider reframing your mistakes as learning opportunities. So when we honor our story, we want to make it a habit to not label something as a failure or as a mistake, but understanding that every misaligned yes, every autopilot yes has brought you here. And there is wisdom in that. And so I want you to take a moment to really assess and to think about the yeses that have gotten you to this point. Even saying yes to listening to this episode, right? I know for me, a lot of times my yeses have looked like shoulds. I especially went through that in the earlier parts of my adulthood. You know, after I found myself as a single mom of twins, I thought that I had to insert air quotes, like hurry up and fix the mistake. And if I would have continued down that path of yes, I know that it would have drastically changed the course of my life, and not necessarily for the better. I think because I don't label things as a mistake or color my past with regret, I can say that I learned a lot of lessons, but I think the most important lesson that I learned was giving myself the ability to recognize when my yes needed to be a no. And most of the time, what I've found within my own walk is that when something doesn't feel right initially, that is an inclination that you probably need to say no. No more being long-suffering, no more, giving the benefit of the doubt or a second chance, because most of the time, what I found is that when you give your yes and it's misaligned, you will feel some sort of prick, either in your heart, your spirit, your mind, your gut. It will come up for you, and God has a way of showing you that this is not the yes for you. And I just want to speak to the bold becomer who is having a hard time with saying no because they feel like it will let someone else down. It's time to free yourself from that. Anytime that you align your choices and your decisions with other people's expectations, you will always find yourself in some form of a prison. Mainly because all of the things that you're saying yes to don't truly align with you or for you. And furthermore, the only person that has to live with the results of the yeses is you, not the other person. And so it's so important for you to understand that you have an opportunity to seek the truth in evaluating your yes, and honor your story in evaluating your yes. You are the only one who has been with yourself, you and the Holy Spirit. Okay, sis? You and the Holy Spirit have been in every experience that you've had. You know what feels aligned for you. You know what really matters to you. And you know in this season what God is calling you to. So I hope that as you continue to seek the truth and honor your story in this episode and beyond today, that you're able to get a little bit more clear about what you should be saying yes to. Let's take some actionable steps so that we can break free from autopilot and start living with intention. So, one of the steps that you need to take to get off of autopilot and start to move into living with intention is to pause and reflect before giving your yes. I need you to start practicing saying, let me think about it before you actually commit. Listen, as a recovering people pleaser, I know how difficult it can be to say no off jump. But what I've found is if you actually give yourself space and opportunity to practice not saying yes and also not necessarily saying no, but let me think about it, it will give you the space and opportunity that you need so that you can actually consider what you're going to be committing to when you say yes. The next step that I want you to start implementing is identify your commitments. So it's really important for you to start defining what truly matters to you and let that guide your yes. In Matthew 5:37, it reminds us, let your yes be yes and your no be no. And I cannot tell you how many times I've said yes with my mouth, but internally my heart was screaming, my spirit was screaming at me and telling me, girl, you should have said no. I hope I'm not the only one that has experienced that. But today, with these steps, we are learning to break free from that. The final thing that I have for you that you can start to implement is I need you to start auditing your yes, right? And so what you can do after this episode is grab your journal or a notebook, and I need you to start creating a list of your current commitments and rate them: aligned, partially aligned, or misaligned. And so if you can start implementing these action steps, I think it will help you to not only break free from autopilot, but to start getting more clear about what it means to live with intention. Hey there, Bold Becomer. Are you ready to take the next step in your journey to embrace godly authenticity and truly shine? I'm thrilled to introduce my book, Discover the Path to Shine, your guide to uncovering the foundational principles that will transform your journey from the background to the forefront. This isn't just another book. It's a roadmap for recognizing and breaking free from behaviors and beliefs that may be holding you back. Whether you're navigating challenges or seeking clarity in your purpose, Discover the Path to Shine offers the tools and insights to help you align with who God has called you to be. So, if you're ready to step into the light and live with the boldness that you were created for, grab your copy today. Visit courageandashine.com/discover or check the link in the show notes to get started. It's your time to shine. In the previous segment, we addressed some actionable steps that we could take to break free from autopilot. And so I would like to give you 3 powerful reflections that are going to help you to reinforce and implement these action steps. So these are 3 reflections that you can take with you out of this episode and beyond. Reflection number 1. Does this spark joy, passion, or excitement in me? It's time for you to anchor your yes in the emotions that you want to experience. Reflection number 2. What yes am I making room for by saying no? Sometimes we're really clear about the negative thing that we're trying to avoid when we give our no's, right? Like disappointing others, letting someone down, being seen or viewed in a negative light. We're really clear about those results, but sometimes we're not as clear about the opportunities that we are giving ourselves when we say no. And anytime we take the courage and set the boundary of saying no, it gives us space and opportunity to say yes to something that truly does align for us. Reflection number 3 is, how will I know this yes is aligned? And so I've come up with a statement that I want you to use in practice for this reflection. And you're going to fill in the blank with whatever it is you want to fill. So I will know that this yes is aligned when I feel, and then insert the feeling that you want to feel. So for me, I usually say when I feel peace, or when I feel clarity. Or how about when I feel excitement, right? So my challenge for you this week is to choose one misaligned yes and practice saying no to a similar request. That way you're able to build the muscle of saying no. You're also able to work your way up in terms of courage and boldness when it comes to getting really aligned with your yeses and being very intentional with your living. I hope that these reflections have given you some tools to help you implement the action steps that we've talked about so far in this episode. And I'm really looking forward to hearing some of the results that you're getting with them. I've so enjoyed this conversation today about evaluating your yes, moving from autopilot to intentional living. And I hope that this has been a blessing for you. I know that this has been a blessing for me. So I just want to take a moment to wrap up what we've gone over today. And I hope that you'll take this with you, not just throughout the rest of this day, but as you continue on your becoming journey. So here are our key takeaways from today. Autopilot living can be common, but it can also be changed through intentional evaluation. We also learned that seeking the truth and honoring your story are the first steps to reclaiming your yes. And I just want you to know that breaking free from autopilot takes time and grace, but each step brings you closer to living with intention. Well, I would love for you to share your reflections and your aha moments from this episode on social media with a hashtag evaluating your yes. I cannot wait to hear what resonated with you. And just in case you're wondering what's next in our series of Choosing Your Yes, next week we're going to dive into how to incorporate the principle of including your lessons so that you can cultivate a more purposeful yes. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Until next time, keep becoming, embrace godly authenticity, and live with shine. I'll see you on the next episode.